All right, welcome to the Mastering Study Techniques Academic Success Workshop, sponsored by the Student Academic Resource Center. My name is Madison Verdone, and I will be facilitating the workshop today, and we're mainly going to be talking about study techniques that help unlock your academic potential for upcoming quizzes, tests, and exams. So for just a little introduction, my name is Madison Verdone. I am the Academic Consultation and Engagement Graduate Assistant here at UCF for the Student Academic Resource Center. I'm currently a second year in the Clinical Psychology Master's program, and I graduated from UF with my bachelor's in psychology and a bachelor's in criminology. So definitely have had a lot of studying in my days. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit of well-known tips, some general study tips that have helped me, as well as a general study schedule that you can help incorporate into your routine with your upcoming tests and exams. So first, I want to talk a little bit about SARC services before I get into the study techniques, mainly because I think SARC has a lot of amazing services that can help you along with your study journey. So here are some of the services that we have to offer. We have supplemental instruction and peer tutoring. So these both focus on STEM-based courses that have notoriously had high drop, fail, and withdrawal rates here at UCF. So these are both taught by students at UCF who have previously taken the class and have received an A in it. So you know that the person leading it is somewhere that is an undergrad as well and has been through the same experience that you're going through. Supplemental instruction is a bit different from peer tutoring, as they meet 4 times a week rather than 2 times a week, and they usually meet for about 50 minutes rather than 2 hours. So a little bit shorter. However, the person, your SI leader, is actually going to the class with you and then will have sessions after the class and other days when the class is not held. And it's very group work focused, very student led. However, you don't need any appointments for this. It's just drop in at the location indicated. You can see all of our schedules on our UCF SARC website. If you Google UCF SARC, we're the first link that pops up, and you can see all of our schedules. And again, no appointment needed for that. Then peer tutoring has a little bit longer sessions, also student-led. But the difference is mainly the format of it. So the student leading the session typically will ask any or answer questions given by the students that show up, or they'll have their own lesson plan for the day of what they want to go over. But the difference is that they don't go to the class with you, so they don't necessarily have that exact class. Academic consultations are one-on-one sessions. For this, you do need an appointment, whereas for peer tutoring and supplemental instruction, you do not need an appointment. But since our academic consultations are one-on-one, you do need to schedule an appointment with an ACE peer consultant. And this person is mainly there to help guide you with whatever you need academically. So mainly to improve your college level skills. So that has to do with time management, study skills, motivation and persistence, notebook or note-taking, textbook reading, really anything along that manner. It's really nice to have someone to help keep you accountable or help get your head on straight when you're coming into a semester or even coming into a new year at UCF here. And we also have study union. So study union is at the end of the fall and end of spring semesters. And study union is unique as they are a bunch, typically 80 to 90 review sessions held by our SI leaders and peer tutors. And these are sessions that essentially are a really long and big review before the exam comes up. And again, that's held in the student union here at UCF. No appointment needed, just drop in whenever a session is held. This year, it'll be more towards end of November, beginning of December, and we'll have that schedule available in the near future. And then the academic success workshops are essentially this. So we hold different academic success workshops throughout the semester. We have about 6 per semester, except for the summer where we'll have 3. And we like to do a variety of topics. Some of the most typical ones will be time management and study skills. We also like to focus on stress management, as that is a lot of things that students will often forget to do, of course, while we're trying to succeed in college. So it's a variety of topics and they switch up every semester. But today we are focusing on study tips. So here's a general outline of how the workshop will go. First, I'm going to give some general study tips that I believe are really helpful, that are easy to forget. And then we'll review the 5 types of studying, which I think really helps break down the studying process and understand what phase you are in and what you can do to help you achieve everything you need to achieve in that phase. Then we'll figure out how to create a study schedule. So creating a study schedule is essentially, what am I going to be studying? When do I need to study this? For how long? That kind of thing. And then there'll be an activity paired with that for making an actual study schedule. And then I'll show my example as well. And then we'll review some resources that UCF has to offer that can help you along with your journey here. So the first thing I want to go over is some general study tips. The first thing that I think a lot of people take for granted or don't put too much thought in is the environment in which they're studying. However, if you are studying for an exam, a test, anything for an extended period of time, you need to choose an area where you're going to be able to focus the best. So this could be your bedroom, the library, a coffee shop, the office, whatever is best for you. But when you're making this decision, take into account some general things such as, where are you normally going to be distracted? So if you are sitting at your desk in your room, your bed is literally 5 feet away, it's going to be so easy to just hop into bed. Again, if you're at a coffee shop, sometimes it can get really loud there. There's music playing. It might not be the best to study. So kind of just make some informed decisions when you're going to choose where to study. Maybe a study room at your apartment would be really good. Typically, they're empty, or the library is always a good option. But somewhere where you can be like, when I show up, this is how I know my brain is going to go into study mode. I do think avoiding places such as the kitchen or living room can be helpful, especially if you would live with roommates, because that can be really easy for them to distract you just by, asking you some questions, stuff like that. Then also, this one is very obvious, but a lot of people don't do it. Limit your distractions as much as possible, such as your phone. I think the biggest one is to put your phone on Do Not Disturb and then also put it away. So this is actually, even if your phone is still next to you on Do Not Disturb, it's like an instinctual habit to just pick it up. So I highly recommend putting it out of sight, even if it's just in your backpack, so you don't even think about it while you're studying. And then another one is muting the messages on your laptop, especially if you have them connected, or email or something like that. I also want to emphasize preparing and organizing your area, your environment beforehand. So essentially think about it this way. If you sit down to study and then you have to get up every 5 minutes because you forgot some materials or you need to get water or something like that, that really does distract you so easily. And then you have to sit down again and put yourself back into that study space and back into the headspace of, okay, I'm studying. Let me remember where I picked up on. So you want to make sure that you have everything that you're going to need. Get yourself water, get a snack, get all your books, pull up links to the websites you need, any assignments that you had to reference back to before you even start studying. This will allow you to have a smooth study session and be able to go for like an hour without constantly getting up and down. So when we're talking about the time you need to study, it really does depend on your course you're taking. So if you have one course that's very easy, you feel like you grasp the content pretty well, you might only need to study for 30 minutes. However, if you have a very hard course that you struggle in a lot, you have had to ask the professor a lot of questions, you haven't done great on the assignments, you're gonna maybe need to study more for 3 hours. And it doesn't need to be the same amount each day. So we'll talk about this a little more later. But if you studied one day for 3 hours and then another day for 2 hours, and then you find, okay, I'm pretty well versed in this. That last day, maybe you only need to study for 30 minutes. However, what's the most important is that you're consistent leading up to the day of the test or exam. So as long as you're studying a little bit every day, this is way better than nothing. And it's also better than just cramming everything in the day before the test. And then this is a personal thing that I really have found to be helpful for me is creating a comfortable space wherever I'm at. So whether I'm at the library or my office or even at my desk in my bedroom, I like to make it as comfortable as possible. So I'm gonna bring a sweatshirt with me. I'm gonna bring like some comfy shoes just so I'm not, and like I really appreciate changing the lighting to match whatever energy I have at the time, just because this really helps me be comfortable and not want to leave that space as soon as possible. So just keep in mind what you're wearing, if you have everything you need before you start that study session so you can be there for an extended period of time. I also like to say to plan your study time ahead. So this is a little sneak peek into the activity we'll do. But before a test, you should plan at least 5 to 7 days a week to study and review your notes. I know this can seem intimidating and a lot, but this is so much better to actually solidify the information in your brain if you're doing a spaced study like this, rather than just studying for 5 hours the day before the test. It's going to help you do better on your test. It's going to help you actually learn the information and then put it in your long-term memory. So then like weeks down the road, when you have a cumulative exam, you're like, oh, I actually do remember a lot of this stuff. Along with this, something I highly emphasize is to take your scheduled breaks. So there's the Pomodoro technique, which is essentially for every 30 minutes that you study or work on an assignment, you should take a 5-minute break. Me personally, I feel like this is too quick. If I take a break that soon, I feel like it takes me longer to get back in the zone. So what I like to do is for every hour I study or work on an assignment, I'll take a 10-minute break. This allows me to really maximize my time, and that 10-minute break feels better. And I also like just taking a 10-minute break better than a 5-minute break. So it's really up to you, but I do really recommend sticking to the breaks that you schedule. So now we're going to go into how do you actually study. So this video, I think, is a really great primer. We have it on our ACE, or sorry, we have it on our SARC YouTube channel, but I'll play it here as well. So essentially, this is a primer for what we're going to be talked about and a little bit of what I said already, but I do think it's very helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and play that.
Welcome to Study Skills and Test Preparation. Do you find yourself spending countless hours studying but not getting the results you would like? Perhaps you are not using the most efficient study strategies to prepare for exams. In this video, we will cover 5 types of study strategies for effective test preparation and better mastery of course content. You will want to start this process as soon as possible, as studying is a large investment, and you do not want to cram. First, let's look at your study environment. Do you currently study on your bed, on the floor, at the kitchen table? How about the library? If you are on your bed, your brain does not know if you're there to study or to sleep. This makes it easier to get distracted or doze off. If you're at the kitchen table, instead of focusing on studying, you may be tempted to get something to eat. Better options would be to study in the library or at a desk, since you will know exactly what you are there to do and will be able to dive right into your work. It is always important to study in a place that is conducive to studying. Now, let's talk about the 5 types of studying. Studying to gather information, studying to learn information, studying to check for learning, studying to refresh, and studying to improve learning skills. When studying to gather information, you must organize everything needed in order to learn. Compile any study guides professors have given you, as well as your textbook, lecture, and chapter notes. First, make sure that you are reading your textbook thoroughly. One way to do this is by using the SQ3R method, which stands for survey, question, read, recite, and review. To survey your textbook, make note of the print, italics, charts, graphics, chapter summaries, and end of chapter questions. This shouldn't take more than a few minutes as you are only identifying each chapter's core ideas. Next, develop questions from the main ideas you discovered during your survey. Now you can read and actively seek the information that will answer your questions instead of plodding through each line of text. Reading this way helps to prevent the blank mind syndrome, which is the inability to remember what you just read. Next, recite the answers you have found aloud from memory.
What are the two laws of inheritance? Two laws of inheritance, law of segregation and law of independent assortment.
When you finish a chapter, try to answer your questions without looking at your notes or the text. You can then use the answers in your notes or text to check and see how much you have learned.
Yeah. Organism with a pair of identical alleles.
Lastly, you should review these notes every 2 to 3 days. Now that you have adequate textbook notes, make sure to attend class and take notes on the lecture to fill in the gaps. To ensure the accuracy of your notes, you can compare them with those of a trusted classmate. You can also confirm your notes with your professor. Some suggested forms of note-taking include the Cornell format, note cards, and outlines. These formats facilitate reviewing and learning. When studying to learn the information you have gathered, frequent repetition becomes an important part of retention, but you must also learn to understand the meaning of the information, not just memorize. Individual studying and study groups are both equally beneficial, and getting creative with tough concepts is also encouraged. Time management is essential throughout this process. Make sure to define your priorities and create a timeline for yourself. You can refer to our time management video for more information. It is very important that you study to check for learning. The best strategy to create deep and durable learning is self-testing. Retrieving information on a regular basis helps you build strong connections in the brain and solidify concepts in your long-term memory. The harder and longer it takes you to recall, the stronger your retention will be. Quiz yourself without the help of notes or books. Take out a blank sheet of paper or use a whiteboard to write down everything you know about the subject which you are studying. You and a fellow student can also create practice tests and question each other in the format you expect on the exam. Repeat this process 2 to 3 times weekly if necessary to make sure you thoroughly master the subject. You can now study to refresh your knowledge, so you do not forget the material you have learned. Rehearse the concepts you haven't reviewed in a while to make sure they stay in your long-term memory. To ensure maximum retention, you should do this without the aid of your notes. The first 4 types of studying are designed to prepare you for what is important prior to taking your exam. Studying to improve learning, on the other hand, is what occurs after you have taken your test or quiz. Use your test results as feedback to help you modify or replace study skills in preparation for your next test or quiz. If you did not do as well as you had hoped, be sure to analyze your current study strategies and behaviors. Be honest with yourself and think about what type of studying you could have spent more time on. Talk to other students who did well on their exam and see what they did differently. This may help you discover different strategies that will work better for you in the future. You may also want to consider utilizing campus resources, such as SARC, tutoring, and supplemental instruction. By focusing on each of these steps from the beginning of the semester, and by managing your time and tasks wisely, you will never again have to cram before your exams. If you need additional support with study skills and test preparation, please come to the Student Academic Resource Center. And
All right, we're actually located in Trevor Colborne Hall 117 now. But regardless, I think that video is very helpful and gives a nice succinct, oh, let me escape, nice succinct version of what I'm about to talk about, except more in depth. So let me present again. All right, so just a quick review. They went over 5 different types of studying, and these kind of work in a linear fashion. So they go from left to right in terms of when you're going to be doing them within your studying process. So it goes from studying to gather information, to learn information, to check for learning, to refresh, and then to improve your learning skills. So specifically, when we look at studying to gather information, this is going to be your first phase of learning. So a lot of people think of studying as something that happens after, you've already learned everything and now we're just starting to study. So that's kind of a myth because studying starts throughout the learning process. So we should be studying and reviewing our notes as we are learning them. So this is the first phase. And the phase you'll need for this is any study guides that are provided, the lectures, textbook notes that you make, and any class learning material that's given to you. So this is where we're organizing, condensing, and recording our notes. Maybe if you've already taken the notes, turn them into flashcards, or if you're not even given a study guide, make your own study guide and take the time to clarify the questions with your classmates, the professor, if you have a TA in the class, them, or an SI leader or peer tutor as well. So if you do this, this is starting the studying process because you're changing just the information that you've recorded, and now you're starting to turn it into an interactive activity where you're organizing it and rewriting it or putting it in a different format. The next phase is to actually learn the information. So this is the phase when information is encoded in the brain. So there are a lot of different methods for this, and it truly does depend on the course for what is best suited for you. So I'll give you a couple examples for this. If you are in an anatomy class, it may be best to go for a strict memorization route, where you are just memorizing, what parts of the body, where they're at, how many, all that stuff. However, if you're in a class that might be more so for liberal arts or concept-based, story-based, anything like that, you might have to instead do a deeper understanding where you're actually learning how everything connects to each other rather than just memorizing vocab words, definitions, formulas, stuff like that. So memorization versus understanding. If you can confidently explain the topic to another person, then you can truly say that, hey, I do have this this section or this topic down ready for the test. However, if you feel like you can't explain it to another person, or you get lost, or the other person is confused when you explain it to them, then maybe you need to go back and freshen up on it. Again, memorization is kind of just, like it said, remembering it word for word rather than understanding what it truly means. So that can work. So for some classes, especially if it's like, formulas, stuff like that, where you don't really need to necessarily know what does the letter B mean or what have you. But for classes, let's say like psychology, you might need to thoroughly understand it. So then there's also individual studying versus group studying. Group studying can be really helpful because it can let you guys interact with each other and exchange information, see what one person's notes are like, compare notes, and especially if it's in a structured format such as SI or peer tutoring. However, if it's not structured, it can get a little off topic. So just keep in check if the reason that you are group studying is more social hour or if it is to actually study and help each other out. And then individual studying is good. I mean, it's easier to stay focused that way. However, you might not be getting as much information as you could as if you were to pair up with a partner or even a couple people in the class. So really just, figure out what works best for you and keep yourself accountable. Another thing that I think is really helpful is to differentiate between learned information and not yet learned information. So if you are, got all of your notes together, you've written them out in different formats, you've created a study guide. At this point, you can kind of take two different highlighters and be like, okay, this is what I feel like I know, and this is what I'm not really sure about yet. Or you could even star things that you haven't learned yet. If you feel like you haven't learned anything, maybe skip this step. But I think it is really helpful to differentiate it this way because then you can see where you need to spend your most time on. So studying to check for learning is basically self-testing yourself. Oh, that's repetitive, but yeah. So essentially using previous quizzes, any tests that are available to you. You can always make your own Quizlet or look up other people's, and basically just see what you know based on these tests. I also think an easy way to do this is to get the textbook and answer questions throughout it. There's often reflection questions provided throughout it, or you can even just look at the title of a section or a subsection and ask yourself, do I know what this is? And if you don't, you might want to reread that or add it to your study guide if you think it's going to be prevalent for the test. I also like the idea of turning a study guide into a test. So if you made your own study guide or if you had one provided for you, kind of just block out the answers to it or only read the question parts and basically set it up like a free response test. And I always think it's best to do it in a free response format rather than having multiple choices for yourself. Because if you practice like this, you are going to learn the information better and you won't have to rely on like a bank of choices. So then if you do have a multiple choice test, it's going to be that much easier for you. And then I also think this is really good to just incorporate throughout the entire study process. So self-test yourself on each chapter you learn, concept, definition, and then you can do an overall like huge self-test on the study guide at the end of it. So studying to refresh is basically keeping in mind that you will have to go back to the information that you learned from chapter 1. Because if we're sitting here and we are using our 5 to 7 day timeline, which we'll go over further in a little bit, what we have learned or what we have in our brains on day 7 is more so going to be the later chapters rather than the earlier chapters. So making sure you're keeping yourself in check and being like, do I remember what was on chapter 1 and 2 when you're already on chapter 5? Because you do tend to forget things when you feel like you have a lot of information coming in, when you're under a lot of stress, and maybe if you're not using it as much. Also, we tend to forget when we have different clues given to us. So that's why I always say use different formats to study the information. So an easy way to do this is with flashcards. If you're reading the like definition and then word, just flip it around and be like, okay, I know this word, can I give you the definition? And then, okay, here's the definition, can I give you the word? Just making sure you're learning it front and back in that manner. So studying to improve learning happens more so at the end / after the test finished. So this is really helpful if you already had a test in the class because you can look at it and look, okay, one, how did I study on this test? What did I use? And was that successful? And if it was, then you can keep doing that. But if it wasn't, you can say, okay, what kind of methods can I use instead? Such as maybe space studying, rewriting notes, turning notes into study guides, stuff like that. And then also maybe there were specific types of questions that you got incorrect. So maybe all of the questions on chapter 2 you got wrong. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but let's say it does. then you can be like, okay, maybe I need to start reviewing some of the earlier chapters more so. Or if they were all free response questions, then you can be like, okay, it seems like I need to get better at active recalling when I don't have a bank of questions. And then kind of keep track of how well do you still know the content. Did you actually learn the content, or did you just like memorize it for this one test? So if you don't know the content anymore, maybe that's a key that you can use some other strategies to keep the information in your head past just the day of the test. So this is the study schedule activity that I was talking about. So, oh, sorry, this isn't the activity, but this is the explanation for it. So essentially, I like to always say you should be studying consistently at least 1 week leading up to the test or exam, about 5 to 7 days, for at least 30 minutes a day. And then how you will do this is essentially break it down into sections to study for each day. So it doesn't matter if you're not done learning chapter 7 and 8 by the time the test, or by the time you need to start reviewing, because you're going to be reviewing the earlier chapters. So let's say if we have a test on Monday, that Monday before, you should start reviewing, taking notes, studying chapters 1 and 2. Then Tuesday, 3 and 4, Wednesday, 5 and 6, so on. However, I always like to have a review day. So I typically don't like to work on Saturdays, so you'll see Saturdays cut out here. So I put Sunday review everything. I always think it's helpful to have a review day because this goes back to the studying to refresh portion, where we are actually remembering what we already learned in chapters 1 and 2. And then don't forget to vary your activities that you use, especially for longer study sessions. So use tests like from Quizlet, make your own tests on the study guide, use your flashcards, reread notes, kind of just a bunch of different things so you can keep it somewhat interesting for yourself, rather than just sitting there and reading the textbook or rereading your notes, because that is not going to help you learn the information or remember the information as much as a variety of interaction with activities will. And then this is the activity that I think would be really helpful. So essentially what I want you guys to do is to log into WebCourses and find the next date of your test. Any test coming up. It's okay if it's tomorrow, we can still use this activity for it. So what we're going to do is create a study plan using time blocks to prepare for the test. I have the worksheet on the next slide. So write down what you are specifically going to study. So what chapters, what content, stuff like that, and then how you will study it. Are you going to reread your notes? Are you going to rewrite them? Are you going to use a study guide? Are you going to do self-test? Anything like that. And then you can adjust your study times, even if it is less than a week away. So then you would just have to study for longer during the day, even though the idea is to space your study time out effectively here. So this is kind of the activity. Here's what you have to do outside of class. So this is where you can write your study times and everything. And then inside in class materials. So what lectures were they? Is there a class review maybe? Is there a study guide you can use? Things like that. And then any notes you might have. So I suggest pausing the video now, taking a screenshot of this. We also do have it on our website at UCF SARC under our resources tab under study and test prep resources. So you can use that and it's completely fillable. All right, so this is the example that I have. As you can see, I have the dates across the top. I have the exact time I am going to be studying. And then I have what I'm going to be studying here, and then an activity I'm going to be doing. I also have when or what lectures that I'll be using to study, any additional materials, so the PowerPoints that correspond with the lecture, and then also the class review, and then the test day. I find it really easy to use this method. I usually add it to my online calendar. So then I'll just have it pop up as a notification like 15 minutes before I need to. And I think it's makes me stick to my study plan this way. So for example, on Monday, I have a 2-hour period, same for Tuesday, but then Wednesday I only have an hour period because maybe I don't have as much time that day to do it. And then I also have 3 days here for review because I did have extra time here. If you find, or if I came to these 3 days and I was like, okay, I feel like I can say this material front and back, then you can definitely shorten that time. And then you just have extra time to relax or work on something else. So that's another thing. I always like to overschedule my study time rather than underschedule. So you can leave this here and use it as an example if you want to make your study plan moving forward, or if you want to improve yours as well. I also would like to recommend some resources. So I always think that reaching out to your professor, while it can be scary, it is super helpful. I think that a lot of students can be scared to reach out, but that is what they are there for. And the worst thing they can say is that they know or they don't know. And will ask you for further clarification. They'll never think of you bad just for asking for help. It shows you're a dedicated student. Same with reaching out to the TA. And then also here at SARC, such as our peer tutoring and academic consultation session to help you with all of this as well. I also like to say that it's very important to take care of your physical and mental health. So if you are experiencing any mental distress, please reach out to the counseling center here at UCF. So that's UCF CAPS, as well as if you're in experiencing financial instability, you can reach out to UCF Cares or the Knights Pantry. Both are very amazing services that are fairly underutilized here at UCF. And then lean on your support system that you've made throughout your life. So any friends, family, roommates, a study buddy to help you throughout this journey, because it really does take a lot to get through college. So this is all a starting point that you can use to grow. So I really appreciate you all tuning into this workshop, and I hope you have an amazing study session coming up. So enjoy.